You ever have a moment where something just clicks and you realize you're not here to play small? That's the energy we're bringing this season. Welcome to Taboo Talks with Krystal, where we get honest about the messy middle of healing, rising, and rewriting the rules. Each week, we dive into real conversations around healing, leadership, identity, and choosing to live on your own terms. No filters, no performance positivity, just truth, tools, and a whole lot of permission to take up space. Whether it's just you and me today, or I'm joined by a guest who's been through the fire and found purpose on the other side, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Trish, thank you so much for being here with us today. Your story is so fascinating. Can you start by sharing how your journey from nursing led you to integrative life coaching?
Thanks, Krystal, for having me. On some level, I feel like it started a little bit when I was younger. I always was a very type A kid and teenager too. I was very perfectionistic, always probably like a high achiever, always doing my best. And, that carried over to college and then he continued as a nurse. So I originally was in critical care and, I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a high stress environment. But I noticed that no matter where I was, I kind of kept thinking that the harder I worked and the longer I'd be in the field, that at some point I would be less anxious. At first I thought it was because I was a new nurse. Then I thought it was because, well, I'm doing all these different specialties. Um, and then I became a manager. And, obviously being a new manager on a big unit, brought a lot of its own stressors into it. But then I essentially switched to another job, and it was a very smooth transition. It was actually a location that I worked at previously. I was doing well. And I actually realized I was like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I am, you know, good at what I do. I'm pretty confident, but I don't feel any better. I'm still, working an insane amount of hours a week. I'm constantly exhausted. My life was pretty small. It was all my friends were nurses. Years before I met my husband at work. Um, but I kept thinking that eventually I was going to work to this point where I would get this like relief and I'd be able to step back and relax. But I felt like that was never happening. So I just got to that point where I was like, okay, something needs to be different. Everything I'm doing is not working. And I really was to the point where I'm like, I don't want to get a doctorate and just keep climbing up, this ladder and doing these things if everything that I've done so far hasn't given me like the relief that I desired, the life that I desired. And truthfully, I don't even think I knew what that looked like, but there was a feeling that I thought that I would experience at some at some point that just never came. So pretty much I just started to try to do things differently. Around the same time, my husband and I were going through an infertility journey. And I think that kind of actually helped things click a little bit to when I realized it was okay, I've working hard and being diligent and doing everything I can was not translating into the outcome I desired. And even though that had a lot of its own challenges, it really actually helped me to start do things a little bit differently. And I was just kind of experimenting at first with using different products and whatnot. And then I was like, I'm such a high stress, high strung person. Maybe instead of doing a spin class and weightlifting, maybe I should try these like guided meditations. Maybe I should try yoga. All the things they say to do that I just thought was too fluffy or just not enough. I didn't want to associate it, with, oh, that's not good enough for my physical health, or I don't really need those things. Um, I basically kind of was like, all right, we have to do something. We have to do something to make a change because I just could not continue to live the way I was living. And, my mind was constantly racing. I was actually dry heaving every morning. And it was essentially the stress anxiety that was causing that to my body. And I was just exhausted every single weekend. So I knew something had to change. Well, I started trying to do these things. And truthfully, they didn't help. Even my husband said to me at one point, he was like, I literally could see your mind racing as you're doing that guided meditation. You were not meditating at all. Um, and what I did learn though is even though I did that yoga, there was 5 minutes at the end for you to lay on the ground and you would relax and it would do a quick yoga nidra. And that yoga nidra lasted a minute and a half. And I know this because lying down for that time was almost infuriating. I kept looking at my phone, seeing how much time there was. Once they stopped talking, I was like, oh my God, it's 3.5 minutes. And it was painful. I got to be honest. It was completely painful those last 5 minutes, especially the last 3 minutes and 30 seconds of essential silence. I remember thinking, I have so much to do. Why am I wasting my time doing this? I'm wasting energy. Like I have to do all these things. So the reality was is that I was just checking a box, but I wasn't really feeling any effects. So one day I was reading through Mind Body Green, and this little article came up, and it said something about increasing your frequency, and it caught my eye, and I was like, well, you know what? Maybe that's what I need to do. Like trying to do relaxing activities isn't really working for me. Maybe I need to increase my frequency so I have more of the energy to do all these other things that I want to try to do. So I, read it, and it goes into a video, and it was Guru Jaquette talking about Kundalini yoga and starts talking about how it affects the nervous and the glandular system. And that really kind of it sparked my interest because as a nurse, I was like, oh, I've never really heard of someone talking about any type of yoga affecting your nervous or glandular system. And I just stayed on. I ended up doing a whole practice. And afterwards, I felt this sense of calmness and this relief. And it was short lived, it wasn't like forever, but I felt it long enough that I was like, whoa, this is actually what I've been trying to find. I don't even think I could have put a word to it back then, but the best word I could say is this momentary relief or this calmness. And I'm like, okay, I need to find this feeling or this experience more often. And pretty much from there, I was really ready. I ended up diving into teacher training before taking an in-person class and went through teacher training, learned everything from there. And at that point, I really just wanted to learn more of, okay, clearly over this time period, I noticed that my anxiety shifted. I wasn't living in anxiety anymore. I wasn't living in stress. Um, but I was doing yoga like every day, and because it's one thing for teacher training, and I'm doing it for a long period of time. And afterwards, I was like, you know what? There's got to be a more effective way of doing this. There has to be another reason of why this works that could be a little more systematic than just doing tons of yoga because that was required in teacher training. So that's really what led to me being an integrative life coach now is that, through the practices of Kundalini yoga, it actually led me to learn more about our nervous and glandular system and really why certain practices can work on different areas of your body, really creating a bottom up approach as a relationship, to our body, to our brain, other than the typical top down approach. I was living in a top down approach, right? And our brain is wonderful and our brain is so smart and our brain controls so much. But our body actually speaks to our brain more than our brain can speak to our body. So I used, the body to help quiet my mind, to release my anxiety, and really from there started to create a very different life for myself. I went from having a very narrow life to now one that's yes, I still work as a nurse, but now I work in this capacity where I work as a nurse. I work as a coach now too. I have a podcast, I teach yoga, and, something that I never would have imagined being able to balance all those things, 5+ years ago, because I was just so utterly exhausted at the end of every week. I had nothing left to give to any other area of my life.
Wow, that's such an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. Can you go into a little bit about what you do as a coach?
Oh, sure. So, just to take one step back with that, because it all ties together. One of the things with anxiety, in particular, is that we have a decreased perception of control. And that's why a lot of us, when we're living in anxiety and stress, we feel this need to control all these things around us. And the word I want you to hone into was the word perception. Now, if we look at polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges, one of the key tenets of it is that the nervous system state that we are in is essentially the lens that we perceive the world, the way we experience the world. And it also affects all of our organs, how they function and operate, as well as the sensory system. So we think of our nervous system as the autonomic only, but we also are this sensory experience, which is how we feel and how safe we feel. Now, as a coach, yes, this is one portion of the work is learning to identify what nervous system state that we're in, building a relationship with your body, using and experimenting with what nervous system practice could do best for you as well. Because it's not always necessarily like, oh, this practice equals this state. There's some of it, but it's also you learning of what works best for you and what can you do over a period of time so that we can change the state that we're in into that more ventral, that connected state. But the second piece to the way we perceive and look at the world, yes, is where our nervous system state is living, but it's also our past experiences. So, as we start to change and work with our nervous system, as we become and create safety in our body, as we create safety in our body, we start to create our own self trust. And then we start seeing things differently. They say in Kundalini Yoga that they make the unconscious into consciousness. So as that happens, we are now actually getting to the point that instead of reacting to things, we start to bring this conscious awareness of choice that we have of how do we want to respond. We start to see this dichotomy between what our brain is telling us to do because it's used to us reacting in that way versus our body and what our body feels that need to do. So that's kind of in the nutshell of what I do is that, I help you not just regulate your nervous system, but learn what your body is telling you, start to develop that self-trust, start to develop that confidence. And also we start to kind of reframe those past experiences so you can start to take an active role in what you want your life to look like.
I love it. For someone who is listening right now who is feeling stuck in anxiety or burnout or constant exhaustion, like you were saying, what is a simple practice that they can start today to begin calming their nervous system?
Oh. So my absolute favorite, I will say, yes, we can do things that are physical. We can do things that are using our voice. We can also do things that are related to our breath. I am a huge fan and a huge proponent of our breath because it's something that you can do pretty much anytime and any place, right? You don't necessarily need to set aside a ton of time to do it. You don't necessarily need to be calling attention to yourself. So I would say the biggest thing that works for whatever nervous state you're in, and that's why I always give this one breath. It's because it doesn't matter if you are in the sympathetic mode or it doesn't matter if you are in the dorsal immobilization mode. You could totally do the one-to-one breath, which is an equal inhale and an equal exhale through your nose. So if you don't mind, I want to give some specifics on how to do this. So we're at a desk all day, and sometimes we end up being very hunched over. When we're hunched over, we're actually communicating that we don't feel safe to the rest of our body. So if you want to take some small steps to start shifting yourself, first thing you could do is notice your posture. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground. Make sure your hips are feeling solid in your chair. Make sure your spine is straight and you are feeling straight and that you're not hunched over. If your shoulders are really, elevated, try to see if you just relax them for a second. And so once you start actually getting your back straight, you're starting to communicate a little more safety within your body. And then do your best to take a 5-second inhale through your nose. And before we start doing that, we are actually filling our belly with air. You want your belly to stick out when you're doing this. As you fill the belly with the air, your air is going to move up, your diaphragm is going to fall down, your chest is going to puff out just a little bit. And when you hit the top of your lungs, just hold the breath for a moment and do a slow controlled exhale. And let's try for another 5 seconds. As your chest falls down, your diaphragm is going to pull up, and you exhale all that air out of your belly all the way to the back of the spine. And I'm saying this because so many of us are also very chest breathers, right? We're very shallow breathers, and we want this breath to be deep and abdominal. If you look at a baby and the way they're breathing with that abdomen and they are, filling that big old belly up. Another thing, especially as women, is we tend to do what you call paradoxal breath, which means you're doing the opposite. So instead of filling your belly up with air, we inhale and we're pushing our belly in. Because how many of us, right, we're taught when we're younger, we want that slim belly. So you suck in the air of your belly. So you start thinking your inhale, you should suck that air in. And actually, it's the opposite. So take those big inhales, fill that abdomen up with air, bring that air to the top of your lungs, and do a slow, controlled exhale. And if you could start doing this just for like 1 to 3 minutes a day, that is such a great place to start. Because when you're doing those long, deep breathing, I mean, it's great for, yes, it's great for your lungs. You're oxygenating the air. That is oxygenating the air, You're oxygenating the blood in your system and bringing the oxygen throughout your whole entire circulatory body. But you're also communicating more safety to your body as well, because our nervous system, specifically, you could say the vagus nerve, actually is at our heart center that communicates up to our face, but it also has the dorsal area that's communicating all the way down to our abdomen. So when we're taking these breaths, we're actually hitting different portions of this vagus nerve.
So beautifully put. Thank you so much for spelling that all out for us. I know all of that up here, but I could never put it as eloquently as you have. So
Oh, thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that. One of my favorite sayings is I never lose. I win or I learn. Looking back on your journey, what has been your biggest lesson from a moment of failure or challenge?
Oof, that is such a good question. Um, you know what? My biggest lesson, I would say, it's all about perspective. You get to choose. So I would give the example of even as simple as like building my own coaching practice, yeah, we're not going to have instantaneous success. I also host a podcast, right? It's the same mentality. We're not going to have instantaneous success. And especially as a nurse, we all have this theme in there of like nurses don't like to be novices. Well, nobody likes to be a novice for the first time, right? But I think that once we kind of get into our main career and we become an expert in something, it's really difficult to become a novice again. The thing is, when we become a novice, we ultimately have the choice of how we want to perceive that experience, whatever we choose to do. Are we going to go with the mentality of, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I'm a failure and I'm just not going to do this anymore and I'm never going to be good at it? Or is it, I'm going to try this and I'm going to see if it works. And if not, I'm going to try something else. And, I think a big piece of it is, what words are we using during this experience? Are we saying like, I don't know if this is going to work, let me see what happens? Or is it going to be like, I know this is going to work, I just need to figure out how to do this?
Yes, so powerful. Your words matter so much. Great advice. They say where attention goes, energy flows.
Mm-hmm.
So I 100%
Yes.
agree with that. Before we wrap up, Trish, I know you have a resource that you brought with to help people start calming their anxiety using some of the Kundalini practices that you have been talking about. Can you share a little bit about that and how our listeners can connect with you?
Sure. So I have a little freebie called Kundalini to Calm Anxiety, and it is sharing with you some of the simple Kundalini practices that I started to do to help shift my own nervous system state. What I love about it is it's super simple. It's less than 15 minutes long. Actually, I think it's only 11, and you could do most of it from your bed. And honestly, I was so exhausted when I started, I couldn't even get out of bed, and I knew if I got out of bed, I wasn't going to do it. So it's simple, it's easy to do, and I coach you through your inbox during the first 5 days. And I start to show you how it doesn't, how each practice is hitting what different state you could possibly be in, and help you start to kind of realize, okay, what shift are we feeling? You may not feel it right away, but it's also about how can we start building a practice for ourselves. And the more we do something and show up for ourselves consistently, we start to rebuild our own self-trust.
Yes, and you're right. It's so hard, especially when you're just getting started, and every little step that you take is awesome. It's amazing. I
It
remember and
is.
I used to be teaching in studios, and to get back onto my mat and just do a very simple 5-minute practice in the beginning was so difficult.
Yes.
So important, because if you don't take those first steps, then you can't get to the next and the next and the
Yeah.
next.
Sometimes
Right.
the hardest thing is just showing up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Trish, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your wisdom and your tools to help us navigate stress and anxiety in a healthier way. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Krystal.
Mamas, if something Trish shared with you today resonated, I encourage you to take the next step. Check out her Kundalini to Calm Anxiety program and start creating space for calm and clarity in your life. The link will be in the show notes, so be sure to grab it there. And that's all we have for today. Remember, mamas, you are stronger than you think. You are never alone, and you're doing the work not just for yourself, but for your kids too. Keep breaking those cycles, keep showing up for yourself, and I'll see you back here next week.
Woo! Take a breath, because this isn't just about pushing through or keeping your head down. This is a season of stepping up, making moves, and the move is breaking the pattern, choosing differently, learning to trust yourself enough to stop, recalibrate, and move with intention. Breaking cycles, not just for you, but for the generations that come after you. If this episode resonated, please send it to someone who needs it, because real conversations deserve to be heard. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps us reach more people who are ready to step it up. Listen, if you're not just here to survive, but to build something real, whether it's in your life, your leadership, or your business, let's connect. Whether you want to work with me, book me as a speaker, or learn how to build a brand that actually aligns with your purpose, head over to krystalcasey.com/links. Everything you need is there. And remember, you were never meant to just keep going. You were meant to break the cycle, build something real, and reclaim your power. Keep leading, keep creating, and I'll see you back here next Tuesday.